Movies, science fiction, fantasy, horror. We kind of love them all. Zach, maybe not so much the horror, but some of those, maybe. We also love top 10 lists, so join us today. We're going to bring you our top 10 list of those genres of movies, all blended together. But to make the list, they have to have more than 3 movies in the series.
Yeah, we're big readers. We're used to investing in things.
Give us some length.
So hi there, welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son sit down and talk about fantasy, sci-fi, horror, and anything else that we just happen to like. It's pretty varied. My name's Zach, I'm the son of that equation.
And I'm Jim, I'm the father. And yeah, we go with the flow. I mean, there's a little bit of planning and thought as to what we're going to record, but the specific kind of things we talk about, it's all over the place.
We don't tend to talk a lot of romance because you don't like it, but like I do.
We do have some romantasy reviews by you.
Yeah.
Not by me. But today, we're going to talk movies, and we hope that's why you're here. We think you'll enjoy it, so we're going to ask you to hit that like button. You can do it now and change your mind later, or do it now and then forget you did it, and it stays, which is awesome. And we would encourage you to subscribe to our channel. We've got over 1,000 videos. Check out the other things here on Fantasy for the Ages. We think you'll like what you find. If you hit that notification bell, you'll also see when we keep dropping more stuff, we have a new video come out most days. Yeah, kind of fun. So, a list. We have a whole playlist on top 10 videos, and top 10 and videos like it. Some are top 50, but we love to rank things. It just gives us a reason to chew on topics, to debate, to wrangle.
Okay, I gotta stop us here for a moment. I gotta confess.
Okay.
I hate ranking. So, a well-known personality trait about me is that I don't like picking singular favorites. I don't have a lot of like this or that. A lot of things, if I have a singular favorite, it's once upon a time I chose something that is going to be what I tell people is my favorite. And so I continually do it. But favorites are very polarizing. It locks you into something that you say is your favorite, and it's usually not my vibe. That being said, it's very good for this discussion, and I'm down to talk about them with you. But that's why these are your top 10 lists, and I just give input.
All right. And nobody's gonna hold you to. Okay, you said, Zach, you said that was your favorite. We can change.
No,
our minds
you
can change.
Say that, but in 10 years, someone's gonna pull these videos back up, and I'm gonna get in trouble for liking something that now has been canceled or something.
So there you have it, people. This is mostly my top 10 list, and Zach is just gonna influence and debate the list. But so there's some authenticity here. We've both given some thought to what are some of the best longer series in these 3 genres that have come to film. We're not talking TV series this time. We're talking movies specifically. And there are plenty that have a whole bunch of movies, and most of them are crap. So those aren't going to make the list. We really had to think most of them were good, were worth watching. Not necessarily all the films. It's hard to have a series of 6, 7, 8 movies and have all of them be knock it out of the park films.
It happens, but
it does. Those will be high on the list. But there are some we're going to talk about today that aren't quite at that level. But so Zach has done his prep. I've done my prep. We're going to talk about them here now. And then at the end, we'll come to some agreement on which are my top 10, apparently.
Now, remind me and everyone watching, what's the minimum number of movies we need to get to make it onto the list here?
4.
So it can't be a trilogy.
It can't be a trilogy. Can't be a duology. That's a different episode, which came out just a few days ago. That was just mine. For this bigger one, Zach's involved. So if you want ones that are just trilogies or duologies, go look at that episode. But if there's nothing beyond 3, it won't be here.
Unless I cheat a little.
And there are a couple movies that made that other list that actually have more than 3, but I only really count the 3. The most famous on that one, I won't tell you where on the list it was, but The Matrix made that list. Technically, there's 4 Matrix movies, but everybody talks about the Matrix trilogy.
Correct.
Then there's that other movie. Also, I did throw the Deadpool trilogy onto an honorable mention on that list because it was still too new and fresh. Recency bias, I couldn't be sure it was really top 10 worthy.
But you really
love
like
those
it.
movies. So, yeah, I gave them a shout out. But again, those won't show up here today. There's not more than 3.
So what do we have? What are some picks you got for me?
Okay. So I'm going to start at the bottom for me of what I'd say is I'm thinking the 10th pick, except I'm going to actually squeeze in an honorable mention for one that I don't think is good enough to be the top 10, but almost. It's kind of a category of its own, and it's the Shrek films. Okay? There's 4 of them, and they're hilarious. They start out stronger and get weaker, but there's so much humor, so many jokes. It's definitely fantasy.
If we consider this a duology, it might be in top 5. It might. But once you get to 3, 4, and beyond, no.
But I give honorable mention. Again, not on the top 10, but they made an impact. And especially those first couple, you can still go back and watch them again and laugh. There's good fun. The Muffin Man, there's moments that are iconic.
The Muffin Man. Yeah.
You monster. Okay, but seriously, for number 10, I'm bringing the Conjuring universe.
How many is that?
There are 9 films now.
Are there really?
Yeah, some of specifically the Conjuring. Then there's the Annabelle films and the Nun series. They're all in the same world.
The same connected.
Yeah, and they're all top-notch films. Some of them will scare the crap out of you. They're really good, jump scares and everything, but they're well filmed, they're well written, they're good stuff.
I know that these are well done. I know they are jump scare heavy, which I personally find to be a cheaper version of horror. So it's not really my vibe. So it's okay to be way down there at 10.
But the key is, yes, they're jump scares all over, but that's not all that there is. There's a lot of substance to these movies and jump scares. That's why we'll consider. Because if it was just the jump scares, wouldn't make top 10.
All right. Well, let me posit something. I'm going to throw it in here.
Okay.
I have to throw it in here because some people would have it as their number 1. They're horribly wrong. And it shouldn't be on the top 10 list because we both will vehemently not like these.
All right.
But there are 4 of them, so it does belong here. That's the Twilight Saga.
I had to seriously look at the Twilight movies because, there's a lot of people who do love them. If we talk about
just success level and pop culture phenomena, this belongs. It's there. But, man, I wish it wasn't.
So is that your dishonorable mention? The Twilight
That's my
movies?
Dishonorable mention.
Fair enough. It took me a long time to go back and watch the last film because I was like, I haven't enjoyed these enough to watch. But I did finally watch the last film.
It didn't help that the last book also got very weird. So you can't do much with it without it being very weird. And it was that time in film where it was like, oh, let's squeeze a little bit extra out of these. Let's get part 1, part 2 for the finale.
And vampires that glitter. Really? By the way, that's in Forks, Washington. That's the setting. I've been through Forks, Washington. I was just there 2 weeks ago. I did not see any glittering vampires.
Oh, good.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to give one that's really top 10 worthy from your consideration?
No, you can.
Okay,
you can go because I'll have fewer, so I'll just toss them in every now and then. But I would like to see what your actual list is, and then we'll see how many of yours I steal.
Okay. Number 9 on my list. I debated, and it almost didn't make it, but I was like, no, okay. I've enjoyed these enough. The Pirates of the Caribbean films. There's 5 of them. And again, they start the strongest, and they get progressively weaker, but the first 3, there's enough there to really be decent, and then a couple more that they're making more money, but they're not horrible. And I don't think there'll be any more. Because Johnny Depp has said, I am not doing Captain Jack Sparrow anymore. That's it. It's gone.
If he ends up needing more money, I'm sure he will. Because goodness knows he would get paid too much to make another one of those movies. It's like Harrison Ford with Indiana Jones.
What do you think of the Pirates of the Caribbean?
I enjoy them. I always get a little bit torn as to whether I should include them on a really fantasy thing. And then I think about it a little bit further and go, No, there's ghost story and bones and weird things and literally going to Davy Jones' locker and having a ship that goes underwater and a big
Great
ass
special effects.
kraken. I'm like, no, these are fantastical. It's fair. It's not what I usually think of, but it's fair.
Also, it gave us one of those memorable soundtracks. You know, you hear the music for this movie, you know instantly what you're listening to.
Oh yeah, very well done. I'm gonna throw some low hanging fruit out here because I think this has got to be in your top 5.
Okay.
Where do you have Harry Potter on the list?
Somewhere in the top 5.
Okay. Okay. We'll get there. We'll get
Okay.
there. What's your 7 then? Or 8? 7?
8. We're up to 8. 8 is a horror franchise again that has had lasting power. There's a lot of horror movies I'm just not putting out here. They have big series. You know, Friday the 13th, you're not going to find
You're
this
not
here.
making
Okay?
that one's not going there?
This is cheap stuff. No, this is a different level of horror movies, but also somewhat campy in the early days, and that's the Evil Dead series.
Interesting.
5 films. Now, the first and the second film are basically the same film, but they did it really cheap, and it was a cult phenomenon, and then they got big money thrown at them, and they did it again, better. And then it flows into Army of Darkness, which is just, we got to do more with this character, Ash, you know, and stuff. And then it's been rebooted. So there's been 2 newer Evil Dead movies that are really well produced. The last one being Evil Dead Rise, which was not bad. I didn't think it was the best movie I'd ever seen, but it was really great effects, well acted. It was just the script was a little, but intense.
It says something that you're putting it on the list.
Yeah, yeah. But those first movies were something.
I will say I kind of expect that some of the heaviest hitters on this list for you will be sci-fi fantasy things, but then the rest of the list will be filled with horror. Because horror has a tendency to have longer series.
Yeah, but I'm looking for the real quality. Honestly, I only have one other horror series on this list.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So you want to know what number 7 is?
Is it the other horror?
No. Planet of the Apes. The entire series. We're talking about 9 films that start in 1968 and finished, maybe there'll be more, but with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That was just last year.
We're including the really, really old. We're including the Mark Wahlberg stuff. And then we're including the more recent Andy Serkis.
And they did tie the Mark Wahlberg film into the more recent ones. They link them very specifically. So that is part of the reboot still. These movies, I mean, back in the day, they were great. There was nothing like them. They had a real following. I loved them as a kid. And then what they've done with Andy Serkis and Caesar and all this new stuff has been so well designed and well produced and just blockbuster films. I think this is fantastic.
It's a weird point for me where, like, I think they are good movies and well done often, but it's often not what I'm thinking of when I want a movie even necessarily. So it's like I have to plan my way into a specific mindset or mood before I even consider watching these movies again.
Okay.
I don't know. It's weird.
Number 6 is the Alien franchise, which has 6 films. Now, the first one is really horror in space, but the rest are just straight sci-fi action films.
I was curious if you were going to qualify this as horror or sci-fi, especially as we go further and we include not just the 4 that I think of as the old school original Alien movies, but then we get to Prometheus and
Alien
Covenant, Romulus recently, which have not seen yet, but I have heard is a return back to kind of the feel of some of the horror even.
I don't think I even counted that in the count. So I think that makes 7 films actually in the series. I haven't seen that most recent one.
I've heard it's really good.
Nice. Okay. So you're good with that making this top 10 then? That's a worthy franchise?
I think it hits at least 2 of the 3 bells of sci-fi and horror there. So, sure.
Okay. Now, number 5 is my last horror franchise. And it's just one of my favorites because it's done so well, but it's also a little meta. I'm talking the Scream franchise, which has 6 films out, continues to pack a punch. was a game changer when the first one came out, and then they managed to do sequels that just really were so well done, well written. It was so good, it started the Scary Movie franchise, which is just a parody of the Scream franchise, which is partly a parody of horror movies.
Now,
Fantastic.
me and my lack of horror movie knowledge, as well as my lack of your actual preferences, until you said this, was sitting back going, okay, he's going one of two routes. He's either going to put Scream up there, or he's going to put Saw up there. And I don't know which one.
Nope, not Saw. But I did think about Saw. And I've got a few film series I'll mention at the end that I seriously considered putting in the top 10. Saw's not on that list. It's like the tier right below.
It's like the top 20, but the end of it.
If I was doing a top 20, you might have seen Saw. Yeah.
Okay.
But, torture porn, it just gets a little too much with Saw.
Yeah.
It's the best storyline of all of those class of movies, but it's not going to make my top 10 when we're blending the three genres. No. Yeah. Number 4 is what I'd be up to. You want it now, or you want to throw something in before I steal something you're going to throw in?
Okay, so I have what I think are going to be 3 of the top 4. No, I think I know what all top 4
you
are.
You probably can figure all 4.
Know.
So they're big hitters, man.
Let me guess which one of the 4. I think number 4 is going to be Indiana Jones.
No. Believe it or not,
is not
Indiana
one of the
Jones is not on my list.
I just know you love it.
I do, but for terms of thinking of this list, there's really the first 3, and then those others just drop so far off. I'm not putting it in the top.
Right, let me take a second try. Number 4, the Terminator series.
Ding, 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 ding. Absolutely. And yes, there's a drop off in the Terminator movies too, but I love them at a different level. They are just iconically something unique. Nothing else quite matches or replicates what the Terminator series brings. There's 6 films now in the Terminator series, and I haven't seen the last one yet, Terminator Dark Fate. I got to go find that one still.
There are some good ones. There are some bad ones.
There are.
But it will always remain a classic.
And then they even threw in a TV series, but that's not factored into this. All right, so that's number 4. What do you think number 3
is going to have the word star in it?
You are right. But which
one? I think for your list, I think you would go with Star Wars lower down.
So close.
Is it Star Trek?
It's the other one.
The Star Trek?
Star Trek is 3.
My thought process was, yeah, there's a lot of bad ones, but you get so much more there. And especially with the reboot, those are all good.
The Star Trek series, 13 films now. And yeah, I enjoy them all. And the TV series that go with. I've been rewatching The Next Generation again. Give me Star Trek. I love it. Absolutely. But how it compares to Star Wars, Star Trek's an easier reach. Star Trek builds from our world, our reality, and just projects into the future. Therefore, the writing did not have to be as creative, did not have to go as far out there as the Star Wars universe does.
So what you're telling me is sci-fi is easier than space fantasy.
I would definitely say so. To do it,
that is a hot take. I don't know if I agree with that.
But
simply because
hey,
you have to try to pay attention.
It's kind of a reach to call Star Trek sci-fi. Okay,
I don't think it's that much.
There's a lot of that stuff that's also sci-fi fantasy.
Oh,
it's not
absolutely.
So much sci-fi.
But it tries to still disguise itself as harder sci-fi. Is Star Wars number 2 then?
Star Wars is number 2. Star Wars is
okay.
number 2. 11 films now. So you got the 9, plus you've got Solo and
Rogue One.
Okay, so
and you've got various shows and things 11. As well, but we were just talking films.
Just films, yeah. And I think there are stronger stories than what Star Trek tells. Star Trek's movies, more honestly, are just giving the fans something they want. And it's fun. And it's a good story. And it's building off of the TV episodes. Where Star Wars, it was primarily all about the epic story, the space opera that's being told over time. And now there's a whole bunch of TV shows Disney Plus is throwing at us, but that wasn't the crux and the core of the movies. I think we have a better story.
Look, at the end of the day, the original trilogy was great. The prequel trilogy was met with mixed reviews originally.
Don't be a hater.
And then 10, 20 years later, we look back and go, oh, that was great. And some of these movies that we hated on when we were younger, we love on now.
I never hated.
For the same reasons. I'm still going to make fun of how Hayden Christensen talks about sand, but like, I still love him in the role.
I still want Darth Jar Jar.
Now we go a step further and we talk about the sequels trilogy, and I think we're still haters a little bit. But give it another 20 years.
How could Luke just throw the lightsaber away?
We might get back to a point where we think those are great too. Who knows?
Those are the weaker of them for me, for sure. Yeah, but you're right.
But bringing it back to what I already threw out there, I knew was going to be there.
Star Wars is 2.
Number one is Harry Potter.
Yes.
Banger after banger after banger after banger.
There's no bad movie.
Now there are.
The exception is that they really need to make the last book into 2 films.
That's not my exception.
That's mine, though. It drags a bit, especially Deathly Hallows Part 1.
I don't think you're wrong, but that's because I think the first half of the book was a little bit dragging because it has to build to get to its conclusion. Mm-hmm. The closest you get to bad films are ones where if you never read the books, it's fine. But significant plot points missed out of 4, 5 that takes significant deviations, 6 that I think misses the entire tone of the story and it fails to deliver on that aspect. And so you get weaker movies from that, but that's partially me showing a bias of going, I think the weakest movie is the 5th, and it's my favorite of the books.
And again, the books get larger and larger over time. They cannot put it all on the screen. The movies would be way too big. As it is, the last book, they made 2 movies. So they start editing and they start thinking of what is the real greater story we want to tell this audience over the course of the movies. And that's why some adaptation choices are made that as a book lover, you had issues with, but just as films, they're still great films. And yeah, I didn't like when they stopped wearing robes. Okay, they're nitpicky things we could get into, but they are solid movies. There's great performances throughout, and the whole thing lands the plane really well. Yeah.
Ultimately, there are good, solid reasons why these movies are beloved, why the books are, and why, regardless of how you feel about the world, the author, anything to do with it, this will always have a special place in a lot of fantasy homes.
There you go. So I do have 4 other series that I thought about and I wrangled with, but they didn't make the cut. Before I just give them a little love, is there anything else you would have considered for the top 10 that I didn't even talk about?
There's a couple of things that I considered here and there where I was like, do we count this? Do we not? And some of those were like, it's a trilogy, but it's been tried multiple times. And so it's like, is it a remake? And then I just looked at it and went, they're not good enough. They're not good. One of the biggest that hit there for me was the Chronicles of Narnia. It's been tried multiple times, multiple different ways. And it's just not good enough.
That made my episode on the best of trilogies or duologies, because the most recent film franchise, there's just 3.
Just 3.
And the first 2 are great. And the third one is why there's not number 4.
I didn't love Prince Caspian.
Really?
And I hated Voyage of the Dawn Treader because that's my favorite of the Narnia books.
It really fell short. But I
think they did a great job doing.
I had to tell you, the hidden gem in Prince Caspian is Trumpkin. Peter Dinklage, his performance there as Trumpkin, he just so personifies book Trumpkin. He brings him out, this gruff, grumpy dwarf who doesn't believe these kids. And I mean, he does that so nicely. And
we're calling him the hidden gem because Ben Barnes is not hidden. He's front and center.
Yeah, but he's like later in the movie. That's the guy who plays Prince Caspian.
Yeah, who
Yeah,
you get in like the
later in
first
the movie.
scene.
Yeah, but his big stuff is later in the movie.
Fair enough. But no, if I was going to try and be cheeky about it, I would say there's really something that belongs number one here as well. Because the Lord of the Rings movies aren't just a trilogy, because we also got this bad Hobbit ones. And if I let the bad Hobbit ones come in, I can say the original trilogy.
Okay,
But
I
it's
hear you,
cheating.
and that I hear you. So there's a case for that. But I chose to handle those differently, and you'll be proud of me because I know you don't watch most of the episodes that I do by myself. You're
No,
like,
I'll,
yeah,
I'll
have fun,
peek in
Dad.
every
Your
now and
thing.
then, but I don't usually watch the full thing at least.
So the episode that precedes this, where I did based on just the same genres, but just trilogies and duologies, Lord of the Rings was, of course, number one.
Yeah.
But the Hobbit series was number 4
Was it
because of
really?
you and other people who love it better than I do. I'm like,
To be
Hobbit's
fair,
bloated, man. But they are produced well. There's a lot of good in them. They added so much that I mean, the love story between a dwarf and an elf. Come on, we didn't need that garbage.
I enjoy them. I do absolutely think it's bloated and hurts one of my favorite fantasy books of all time.
So you're thinking number one on this list could have been, if you consider as a set. Well, they both
Yeah.
got a lot of love in the previous episode.
All right. So, what are our honorable mentions according to
Okay,
you?
the ones that I might have mentioned otherwise that I did consider is the Underworld series. 5
I
films. I
mhm.
love them. They have a very different feel than anything else that's on this list and very nicely produced. I mean, good production quality.
I
Plus,
thought you might
Kate Beckinsale,
consider
man.
both Underworld and Resident Evil. Both of those I
That's
thought
the
you might
next one
include.
that was not quite there, but I thought about it. 6 films in the Resident Evil series. I've watched them all. I enjoyed them all. I've watched a number of them multiple times. Yeah, that's great. The Predator series.
Yeah, I wouldn't put them up here.
They start out really strong with just the first movie. And then the second one is the one that takes place in a city. And that's also got some good things to bring, but it's also a little one note. Oh, look, it's the Predator guy who's invisible doing his things with high tech stuff again. But they're fun. I've enjoyed them. And then you throw in the crossovers between Alien and Predator and stuff. Yeah. So I thought about them, but they didn't make the list. The last one is one that if I put it on the list, people would have sent hate mail or
I might have sent hate mail, and I don't
what are
know
you
what it is yet.
doing? My favorite horror franchise from the slasher genre, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Okay, there's 9 films. Some of them are spectacular. The first one, fantastic. A New Nightmare, fantastic. Then there are some real duds in there. But Freddy Krueger is the most delightful creature to come from the slasher genre of anything else that's out there because he's both scary and has personality. And it even eventually gave me the Freddy versus Jason movie. A lot of these movies are ridiculous, but you're at the point where you don't care. You just want to see them on the screen some more. And they always bring great kills. They always bring us some jump scares and they entertain. So I like A Nightmare on Elm Street. And just for the quality of the first movie and what it did for the genre, I might have included it, but instead I just gave it some love.
I'm not going to send you hate mail. I am going to take a little bit of personal grievance with the fact that you called Freddy Krueger delightful.
Robert Englund's portrayal of Freddy Krueger is next level, man.
Still feels like the wrong word to use.
Well, I would never call Jason Voorhees delightful or Michael Myers, but Freddy Krueger has a sense of humor, and it plays through. You have not watched all of those movies because that's not your jam. You don't know what I'm talking about.
No, even when we go into horror vibe, slasher is some of the lower on my list. I enjoy them for what they've done as being like a culture and these cult classics kind of thing, but I don't personally actually enjoy the movies very much.
Total different plug. My most recent video, the one that dropped yesterday, was on the movie Pearl. More modern, that was 2022, and it's part of a trilogy right now. X, Pearl, and Maxine. Psychological horror. Might actually be your jam.
I think I actually saw something recently about one of those and was like, maybe.
Now, I watched the second movie without having watched the first. The second is a prequel, so it was okay to do that. But I would have recognized some things before when I watched it if I'd watched the original first. I still have to go back and catch the others, though. Pearl was that good. It was different, though. Not a typical slasher. Nothing like that. It's a deep movie. That's what we have. So you've got the list, people. We always love to hear what you think of them. That's what the comment box is for. Go ahead and tell us, what did we miss? What order would you have changed? Is there something we put in the honorable mentions that you think is better than something that made the list? This stuff is always so subjective. So we are open to your opinions. And more than anything, we just like talking about this stuff. So leave your comments. Next level, join our Discord server. We've got the invitation down in the show notes, and we've picked up a few new people the past few days. You're finding us. You're coming. We are there with over 100 other people who love talking about books, movies, TV shows, and other nerdy stuff. So if that sounds like you, come try it. To wrap up here today, books we've been reading recently, I want to point out, it's over there, The Heroes. I'm at like 98% now. That's the second of the standalone novels.
And it is better than Best Served Cold?
It is better than Best Served Cold. It's been fantastic. There'll be an episode out on it soon for me. But you've got to read these books, Zach. You got to get to these sooner rather than later.
I think it's on my TBR for sometime next year, probably first half.
And also, way past you was the last Malazan book I just finished, Blood and Bone. Again, fantastic. And I'm bouncing back and forth between Malazan and First Law right now. And it is such a fun ride to do that.
Should I say that I'm still on Deadhouse Gates?
You can say that, because that's better than saying you've DNF'd, because then I might have
No, it's still listed in my currently reading.
Okay.
I get a little bit. I get like 0.5% every now and then.
And what's the last thing you finished reading?
The last thing I finished would be A Darker Shade of Magic.
Ooh, V.E. Schwab,
so it started
right?
V.E. Schwab, first of a trilogy.
I haven't read that yet.
I've enjoyed it, but we'll get more on that some other time. I'm sure I'll talk about it.
I bet we'll have an episode soon. Probably one your mother would like. I've recommended she read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I think she'd like that. So I think Schwab is a profile she would enjoy reading.
From what I can tell, she's a good author. Period.
All right, that's a good spot. Let's wrap this now. Thanks for being with us, everyone. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Again, like, subscribe, notification bell. You know the drill. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.